Now, another thing we might do with Coastal Explorer would be to plan trips. Plan trips with timing involved. Deception Pass is a well-known pass in the Puget Sound area. I'll find it here on the screen. I'll click the search box. There's Deception Pass. I'm going to go to the Deception Pass Bridge. Deception Pass is famous or infamous because the currents run through Deception Pass, can run through Deception Pass at up to 7 knots. And in a 5-knot vessel such as mine, that's kind of a problem. So I want to plan a trip to help figure out when to go through there, when to leave to go through there. Also, looking at charts for a second. Right now we're looking at raster charts, and we see a couple different charts. If you look at this part of the screen here, the detail here versus the detail there, those are two different charts that have been quilted together. If you notice up in the status bar, it says right over here is chart number 18429. Over here is chart 18427. Down here is chart 18423. When multiple charts are quilted together like this, every once in a while you might have some anomalies. There might be some text, especially on a raster chart. There might be some text overlaying something you want to see. So if I right-click on some area and select Charts here, I get to see all the charts that are currently being displayed right this minute. If I uncheck one of them, it's removed from the quilt. Now maybe I wanted it or didn't want it, but anyway, you can control which charts are actually displayed. If I want to get that chart back, go back to Charts here, and select, put a check mark in front of it. That doesn't delete it, it just removes it from view in the quilt right this minute. If you were to shut Coastal Explorer down and restart it, it would come back with all those charts turned back on again. But I want to plan a trip through Deception Pass. And let's say my vessel's going to be over here. We want to start over here on the right-hand side near Hope Island and plan a trip through Deception Pass. So I'm going to create a route to do that. So I click the New Route button. I'll put the first waypoint over here. And initially, I'm just going to create a really rough draft of a route. And how do I get out of route creation mode? I double-clicked on the final waypoint there. So I have my route. If I go to the Properties panel in the task pane, it says my route's about 4¼ nautical miles. About, exactly 4¼ nautical miles. One of the nice things you can do with routes is if I right-click on the route, I can say check the route for obstacles. It opens up a route details page that shows me everything that the charts have that I might want to be aware of. Like there's a caution area back there, there's weeds and kelp that I'm going through. Oh look, there's land right there. Like I said, there's more land right there. I just roughed this route together initially just to get a distance. Now, if I want to go back and make some adjustments to that route, it's quite simple. First of all, I could take this existing waypoint, click on it, hold the button down, drag, move it where I want. So I move it there to get it out of the land area, and you notice the land area disappeared from the list up there. Perhaps I want to insert another waypoint to go under the middle of the bridge. If I click on the route, you notice we get the orange circle, which is an insertion pointer, and I can click and drag to put that waypoint wherever I want it to be. Whoop, and that's getting us awful close to land back there, so I'm going to go back to this waypoint and move it down a little bit, maybe even move it forward. But fine-tuning a route is pretty straightforward. If I were to go back to my kelp area, maybe I want to add another waypoint there. So I click, get the insertion pointer, drag it out to there. I'm going to close my route details, my obstacles here. I'm going to zoom out. In fact, if I want to see the whole route on the screen, I can right-click on the route and say Zoom to Route. So Zoom to Route rescales the window so you see the entire route on the screen. Okay, so now we've got a route. The distance went up a little bit, 4.27. Double-click the route, brings up route details. Wait a minute, it says 21¼ miles, but it says 4¼ over there. Interesting problem. Coastal Explorer is calculating the distance on this route from, if I go to the options panel over here, the boat position. The boat's back in Port Townsend. So sometimes you want distances and calculations done from the boat along the route. Other times you want to look at just the route. Since I'm in a planning state right now, I just want the route itself. So I change this to say start at the first waypoint, and it changes that to say 4.27 nautical miles. It's going to take me 51 minutes to get from Hope Island out into the open water on the other side of Deception Pass. So what time do I need to leave to get through Deception Pass? As a matter of fact, now which one of these? So we have two waypoints here. If I click on waypoint number 5, over in the Properties panel, we're looking at the properties for waypoint number 5. So I'm going to call this the pass, which will make it a little easier to see in my list of things here. So it looks like from my starting point by Hope Island to the pass is about 18 minutes. Now if I zoom in on the chart panel, I'm going to close the window here. Well, actually I'm going to resize it by grabbing that and dragging that up. If I zoom in on the window, if I point to Deception Pass or someplace close to it, right click and select Tide Current Predictions. There's the tide arrow. If I click on the tide arrow, it shows me the current state of the tide. It's right now running at 5.9 knots. Flooding is not going to be slack until 4 o'clock this afternoon. But I'm not going through it this afternoon. I'm looking at going through here next weekend. So up at the top of the screen in the Tide browser, I click on the Go to Date button. I select the date that I'm planning on being there, the 26th. Click OK. And I see the chart there, and what I really want to do is I want to go through there. If I click on the chart panel here, it'll actually show me what the tide looks like. I want to go through just as it's turning to ebb. Now if I want that to be a little bit bigger, I can make it bigger like that. I want to go through there right about there. Okay, so that looks like about 7:09. If I want to find out exactly when it's turning to ebb, I click on the arrow and it says the slack is at 7:03 on May 26th, because that's virtual time. So 7:13 is when I want to get to the pass. Alright, 7:13. So I can double click on my route again, which takes me back to route details. 7:13, but we don't know when we're going to get there because we haven't set a departure time yet. So now I can set a departure time. I'll pick the correct date, 26th. 7:13 is my target time to arrive, so I'm going to start at 7 o'clock just to see how close that'll get me there. And this is not very exact, but this is just a way to use the tool to help figure out things. So this says I'm going to get to the pass at 7:37. That's not early enough. I need to get there before that. So since I'm going to be a prudent mariner, I'm actually going to say, let's leave at 6:30. What happens if we start this at 6:30 in the morning? I'd rather have lots of time when I get there and wait rather than get there too late and have to wait for another tide cycle. So if I were to leave at 6:30 in the morning, this says I would get to the pass at 7:07. Slack tide was at 7:13. Maybe even still not enough data. So how about we leave at 6:15? Mouse keeps moving around. I have a mouse that's not. Okay, there we go, 6:15. So if I leave at 6:15, I'll get to the pass. So it's going to get me there 15 minutes before slack tide. That sounds perfect. I can just hang out on one side of the pass and go through at that point. Okay, so that's one way to use routes, route details, create the route, move the waypoints around, name some waypoints, use the Tide and Current browser.